Hey guys, welcome back to Limitless Learning. Today, we will talk about how to avoid burnout in just 3 easy steps. As time progresses, both external and internal stress factors contribute to ever-increasing burnout as a population. According to a survey, 52% of survey respondents in 2021 cited that they're experiencing burnout, which is a 9% increase from those same survey respondents pre-COVID. While movements are being made to reduce burnout, it only seems to be increasing. With advancements brings a lot of additional pressure, and burnout is a common side effect of overexerting yourself into your work. Burnout is essentially when you overwork yourself and mentally or physically deteriorate your drive and motivation to work due to prolonged stress. Although it might be hard to assess and prevent a burnout, it's important to understand a few steps in a process to help you avoid burnout. The first step is to distinguish when you're about to burn out. It's important to understand your limits and distinguish between pushing yourself and just going outside of your comfort zone versus working hard and depriving yourself of rest, which means working until you eventually break down, which would be your burnout. So, for example, if you're putting in an unrealistic amount of time in the day for work, that might be a sign that you'll burn out eventually. So, for example, I'm a student, and if you're a student and you're working anywhere from 8 to 12 hours a day just on studying, and you're not already capable of doing that, then that might be a sign that eventually you might break down. When you start to feel sluggish, and you feel like you're dragging yourself throughout the day and throughout the days, if you will, then it's better to stop there. So that should be a huge sign to reflect on how you're actually spending your time and how efficient you're being with your time. For example, if you're spending 10 to 12 hours a day on your desk, but for the last 6 hours you're only putting half level work, then is it really worth sitting on your desk for another 6 hours when you could take an hour break, come back refreshed, and then finish the 5 hours being refreshed and actually being efficient while you're working? So overall, find out when you switch from working hard at an optimal performance to overexerting yourself into your work. There's a bell curve that I forget which scientist made, but he basically, this is just a simplified version, but he called this a bell curve for optimal productivity. I'm not sure if that's the exact name, but that's basically what it's testing. So if you're doing easy work, so let's say this is easy work right here, then this y-axis would be your productivity, and let's say we'll split this bell curve into 3. This is going to be easy work, this is going to be basically average work, or work that's hard but it feels good to do it, it's not unsolvable, and here is your impossible work that just seems that it's never going to be done and it takes you forever to finish. So both for easy and impossible work, your productivity is going to be way low, because if it's easy, it's not going to feel like a challenge. If it's impossible, it's going to be too much of a challenge. You want to have most of your work around the top or the midpoint of the bell curve, which is hard work and is challenging, but it's capable within your mindset. So you want to try to stick to this work as much as you can. And let's say obviously if you're a student, you can't choose what work you get. So let's say if it's an impossible task at that moment, you could try splitting up that task into several portions to make it a lot easier. And that would shift the work from here and would shift it closer to this midpoint. If it's easy work, then you might want to make it more challenging by adding your own spin on problems to make it a lot more complicated. And that could also point it to the midpoint. And when you're at this midpoint for as long as possible, that's when you're going to be maximally productive. That's when you're going to be at your optimal performance. So that's also a bonus tip that you can take in order to maximize your performance throughout the day. Secondly, figure out those causative factors behind the burnout. What's the common factor that's making you frequently burn out? Is it due to your work schedule? Is it maybe due to the long hours you're spending at one specific place during the day? Maybe it's working at home after work. Reflect and identify that factor. So I'll give you an example. For me, when I burn out, it's typically when I start working late into the night and don't get enough sleep for a long period of time. Of course, there are days when it's not possible for me to stop work early, but I've made a rule for myself to never have 2 days in a row. So, to never have 2 days in a row when I don't sleep before 11 p.m. or 11:30 on weekends, and don't get 7+ hours of sleep. So I need to have these two things every single day, and if I don't, I cannot have them 2 days in a row, because I know that normally once I have something for 2 days in a row, that's when I start to feel a lot more sluggish, and that's when I start to continue that habit. If I do it for one day but then bounce back the next day, then that's fine. Sometimes that happens, but this is how I maximize the rest I get and then minimize my chances of burning out. So during this process, just make sure that there's not always times, so it's not going to be perfect. Right? It's not always going to work. Sometimes you're going to have to work after home. Sometimes you're going to have to stay at your desk for a while. Sometimes you're going to have a hefty schedule. But maximizing the amount of time you're spent out of that, that's what's going to cause you to minimize your chances of burning out. Now, the last step is to get yourself out of the burnout and how to stay out of it. There's a variety of ways you can reduce your risk of burning out. If you're starting to feel as if you're dragging yourself through your work, which is essentially the basic or the early stages of burning out, just go outside. So go outside, take a short break, and just get a walk. Walk for 10 to 15 minutes. You can walk your dog if you need to. If not, you can always go for a run, or you can go to the gym, or if you don't want to, you can always just go to a certain part of your house and just work out. During COVID, I often took walks and worked out to keep myself mentally sane while I was locked inside the house. I also have realized the importance of eating healthy. So eat healthy instead of, your typical junk food or fast food, and doing daily exercise. It's drastically reduced my stress levels, and it just makes me feel like a better person as well. Also, if you tend to experience stress in a certain environment, such as your study desk or dining table, try to stay away from that environment as much as possible, if only for a few days. So stay away from environments of most stress. For example, when I feel exhausted, I try to stay away from my office for a few days and work somewhere else. This might sound weird, but it does give a restart to the environment as well, since if you're constantly working there and you constantly feel like you are stressed, you're exhausted, that environment will automatically trigger those emotions when you get there. However, if you give it a few days, just take some rest, do not go in that environment, and then come back, you won't have those same triggers anymore, and it will now feel again like an environment where you can work and be efficient. These are just a few tips that you can get yourself out of the burnout if your burnout is not as bad. But if your burnout gets so bad that you cannot do work for a week or a couple of weeks, just try taking rest. So take rest for a few days. It could be a week, a few weeks of vacation if you need it. But during this, I want you to go outside and just enjoy yourself, right? So that can include, you know, entertaining yourself with activities you love. Maybe just talking with friends or spending time with friends and family. And overall, this would be an amazing way to relax, restart your brain, and also receive some consoling from your family and friends. They can give you tips and strategies on how they avoided burnout, and you can also share your feelings and emotions about your work and how you're maybe getting mentally exhausted. Lastly, another practice that I use every day to reduce exhausting myself is self-help habits. So, self-help habits. And this includes meditation, breath work, which is essentially just focusing on your breathing and doing certain breathing habits, journaling, and you can even just take a hot shower. Meditation, although it's always been around, it's an ever-increasing practice to reduce stress. And meditating, if only for 5 to 10 minutes in the morning or before you go to sleep, would reduce your heart rate, and it's a good restart to your day, and it's a good way to calm down as well. Also, I found that writing about my thoughts and emotions through journaling is extremely relieving, and it's nice to also relive those moments by rereading those entries months and years later as well. So that's a good side effect. Also, before I go to sleep, I love to take a hot shower. That always calms my mood. It reduces tension in my body as well. And it's also been scientifically proven to help you reduce tension and also physically reduce tension through your joints by taking that hot shower before you wind down and go to sleep as well. So overall, burnout is very common, but it can significantly impact your mental and physical state. However, by finding out when and why you're burning out, you can use various practices such as exercise, self-help habits, and taking rest to reduce burnout in your life. Those were steps you should take to avoid burnout for good. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If this helped you, like the video and subscribe for more content. Leave your comments down below if you have any questions or any ideas as to what videos we should make, and we'll see you guys in the next video.